I also do not believe in introducing other people. So I think they can introduce themselves in terms of letting you know who they are and having a closer connection as our guests and honored guests that they are.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so impressed that you are all still here on a Saturday afternoon when the weather is absolutely delightful outside. I came from a park event in the district in the Bronx. The families were having a family day event, and the weather's just absolutely beautiful. So I think I congratulate you and commend you for being here and staying as long as you have, to listen to something that's, in my mind, very fresh for me. I'm Maria del Carmen Arroyo. I am the city council member that represents the 17th district in the Bronx. And earlier this year, the city council went through a transition. We elected a new speaker, and I was appointed chair of the Community Development Committee in the city council. So with that hat on, I made some new friends in the world of community development, because I really didn't have a sense of how I was going to morph into this position and how to bring it benefit in some way. And I'll tell you a little bit about the work that we've done after my esteemed chairman of the Bronx Democratic County Committee introduces himself.
I used my Bronx identity to
Well, thank you. First, as Maria said, it's a pleasure for me to be here for a few reasons. One, besides being, as Maria said, the chair of the Democratic Party, I also feel I was, a couple of years ago, the Assembly Speaker appointed me the chair, to me, in my opinion, which I think is the most important committee in the legislature, was the chair of the Standing Committee on Labor. And there's a second reason why I'm here also. You know, sometimes when family makes a request out of you, it's very difficult to say no, because Carmen is married to my cousin, who's kind of like my little brother, even though we're cousins. So I couldn't tell her no for two reasons. As I was sitting over while we were waiting, and I was saying to Maria, and oftentimes when we're appointed in these positions, we think we're knowledgeable about subjects, but sometimes when you are appointed in an area where you're supposed to be an expert, you kind of find out how much you really don't know about a subject. And I will add this in that regard. I have an MBA in finance, and in business school, we never touched on worker cooperatives. And so after we, I guess have a little more discussion, I'll give my opinions. And I know some of you mentioned, about a movement, and I just think one of the things we have to do is, because if we, somebody like me, who I believe I have, my pulse on the, on the community, but but even as the Assembly Labor Chair, that this concept is pretty new to me. That means we have a lot of work to do to educate people who are not even focusing in on this. As the chair of the Assembly Labor Committee, this is my duty to know more about this and also to spread the word, because I will a little later on tell why I think that this is such a wonderful concept. But as the growth of social media and everything else, this absolutely has to become one of the discussions that we all talking about every time we're on Facebook and on other things, that this subject has to become more known to people.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit of history, a little bit of background. I got appointed chair of the Committee on Community Development, and I go like, oh, that's interesting. What is that, right? And then when I look at the mission of the committee is to examine poverty in low-income communities. And I said, well, that's a little redundant, right? And we're going to work on redefining that. I also had the opportunity to attend a conference that the Federation for Protestant Welfare Agencies, at PWA, I see a lot of people nodding, held a conference earlier this year, I want to say around January, February. And I was invited to speak at the conference in my role as chair. And I was like, oh my goodness, well, okay. Worker cooperatives was the subject of the conference. And it was very serendipitous. I cannot take credit for anything of what happened in the city council budget when the mayor and the city council speaker shook hands on Thursday evening. Trying to wrap my brain around the committee responsibility, and then confronting the conference and the subject of worker cooperatives, and then the question occurred to me, can worker cooperatives serve as a model to help lift people out of poverty? Went to the conference, had a really nice chat, immediately left and texted the speaker of the city council. And I don't take credit for being very original, but I know the mayor ran on a platform that there's a tale of two cities and equity was a very serious issue. Well, I think this is a model that can help our mayor address that issue of equity as well. So I text the speaker the minute I left that conference and said, worker cooperatives help the mayor address inequities. What do you think? She texts back, I like it. And that set the groundwork for then a lot of work that happened after. And I have to give credit, and I wrote the names down, and I'm gonna mispronounce some of them, but I have to take the time to thank the individuals who were the brain behind the proposal that I introduced into the city council along with my colleague, the co-sponsor, Annabelle Palma, who's the chair of the Bronx delegation in the city council. And we got it included in the budget response to the mayor from the city council. But that happened after months of work with 10 organizations that all have been mentioned here. And we start with Noah Franklin and FPWA. Chris Michael, who's probably working somewhere in the back from NICNOC. We have Omar from Green Worker Cooperative, and I always mispronounce his name, so I'm just gonna, I love you, Omar. Carmen, our incredible moderator for this conference today, and the CUNY Law School. Brandon was up here as one of the panelists from the working world. We have Democracy at Work Institute, Joe Reinhardt, and I don't think he's here today. I don't think you had the opportunity to see him. We have Make the Road New York, Urban Justice Center, and the Bronx Cooperative Initiative. They were the ones that came to separately meet with me in the city council, and I said, so okay, we want government to pay attention, and we want government to put some skin in the game to help worker cooperatives thrive and grow in our city as a business model, one that we can use to help lift people out of poverty. Go put something together and bring it back. Do you know they came back with an $11 million initiative? And I said, okay, well, that's not gonna happen. So let's keep our feet on the ground, and please, go back and tweak it, and they were so incredible. I made them come into meetings in my office, met with the deputy mayor for Health and Human Services, Lillian Barrios Paoli. She brought in the HRA commissioner into the meeting, because get this, HRA in the city of New York is considering worker cooperatives as an opportunity to help those on public assistance meet the WEP, Work Experience Program requirement. I'm just saying, right? This is incredible stuff, all of which happened because of the incredible work of all of those organizations and individuals that I mentioned. Thank you all so very much for making me look so smart. The Speaker of the City Council did not allow the Worker Cooperative Initiative that we presented for funding to become part of that budget dance. And to her, Melissa Mark Viverito, we have to say, thank you very much for your confidence and your support of this initiative, because she did not take no for an answer, and the money will be in the budget because she stood right in front and defended the concept and the thought that we as government have a responsibility to create opportunities, that it's not the same old, already always listening kind of workforce development program that we fund so many of in our city, that if they were doing so well, we wouldn't have so much unemployment, underemployment in our city. So I'm thinking that this helps us, along with creating business opportunities, to help individuals learn skills and develop different strategies for how to earn a living that can help them take care of themselves, their families, and make our city stronger and more economically sound. I'll talk a little later about it, but I'm gonna tell you something. Guys, those of you who are going to work the business of getting that initiative off the ground, we're supposed to start 28 new worker cooperatives, help and advance and expand 20 existing with legal, technical assistance, leadership development, because now we're gonna manage a business by committee. That's gonna be interesting, right? Now, we're under the gun to deliver that. And why you're here, and the fact that you're here is really important. And I believe our community-based organizations, the nonprofits in our city, are in a really incredibly strong position to serve as launching pads for some of those cooperatives that can get created in our city. And I'm gonna leave it there, but failure is not an option, Omar.
I'll get to my intellectual thoughts on. I don't speak too fast anyway. My intellectual thoughts on worker cooperatives, but the councilwoman is not giving herself enough credit, because even when we are presented with ideas, and sometimes when we have to, as legislators, shepherd this to our leadership to get it on leadership's plate. And as much credit as she's given to Speaker Viverito, and she is due that credit, but Maria was the one who really, really kept this on this. So I think she should get another round of applause for leading that charge. When I was in business school getting my MBA, there was it was a business class, and it talked about the type of leader. There's 3 types of leaders, and it said that there was dictatorship, laissez-faire, and democratic leadership. And if most times you can probably put every person that you know that's in a leadership position in one of those 3 categories. And I've always been one to believe that democratic leadership is the most successful leadership. And it translates the same way into worker cooperatives. When people feel their decisions is one that's vested, that their opinion matters, and they're a part of the decision-making process, people feel more included, and usually you produce a better product. I've even tried to do that as a Democratic chair, and Maria is one of the people who has to vote for me to be the Democratic chair, but I've really tried to, as a leader, follow the feelings of the overall body membership. So I'm a big supporter of the concept of worker cooperatives. And as many times as labor chair, I get called into trying to mediate certain things. I remember there was a Cablevision and the union CWA. There was a big fight. And so when you look at it, when you just conceptualize, when you have sometimes labor negotiations, a lot of times there's an us versus them. But if you have worker cooperatives, it's an us and an us. It's not an us versus them, sometimes from the management, on down to the worker. And when you look at someone, if I'm part of an organization and I'm in an ownership and as a worker, owner/worker, I have much more of an invested interest in what happens. It's not just management telling me what to do and how to do things. I'm part of that decision-making process. So it just makes for a better environment. It makes for a better mindset from the worker. And listen, if you're an owner, you want to produce and you want to make sure that you gain from the wealth of that production. So I think this is one of these concepts and movements that particularly I think can change how the world is. If we're so concerned that, at the amount of profits that the 1% of the world, is making, this is a fantastic way for new businesses to be spurned and grown. And everybody who is a member of that cooperative will benefit from this, and not just maybe the top 2 or 3 people who seem to run, some corporations. So I applaud all of you for wanting to this, and sometimes, even for those of you who are religious, you need disciples, and so sometimes those of us have to be disciples to get this movement more known.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that we are really grateful to have both of you with us. And it's not just rhetoric, it's also being really grateful to have our attendees here as well, and getting to know new faces and people who are interested in growing this movement and moving this movement forward. And we all have a role to play. We can't be everywhere at once, doing everything all the time, which is why collaboration and working together is so important. And it's hard work, but it's work that pays off, and work that needs to be done, and we do it because we want to see progress for ourselves and our neighbors and just our humanity as a whole. I want to take the opportunity to see if folks have any questions.
Councilwoman Arroyo, I really appreciate all of the work you have done, and I'm also a member of a group called Community Voices Heard. And one of the things that we've been working on for the last 10 years or more is eliminating WEP. So I would like to talk with you or someone on your staff and who you're working with at HRA, because I want to go back to Jennifer and Sandra and really pull that together.
Hello? I know enough to know that I don't know everything, and sometimes when I try to get into stuff and work it, I mess it up. HRA is in discussions with the partner organizations that help to create the initiative to try to wrap their brain around how the worker cooperative model can help them satisfy the requirements for the WEP program, because it is a requirement that they are mandated to satisfy, because it's federal money coming down and there are rules that they have to follow. So Chris and Noah, Omar, they're the ones that are helping to organize HRA in the process of how they can refer public assistance recipients through a mechanism and get them into training and allow that training to help them meet the mandate for WEP. So I will have my staff connect you to Chris and Omar and the guys that are having those discussions with the agency, because the details of how that's going to be organized is just the conversation is just starting. We are blessed that we have a new HRA commissioner who has a really deep commitment to reforming some of the agency's practices and policies. We're excited about that. Everything is coming together very much at the same time. I don't believe in coincidences. So I think one of the ways that they are going to meet the reform agenda is through the worker cooperative movement. So they're here. Talk to them so that you can connect them back to Community Voices Heard.
Hi, Rebecca Lurie with the Consortium for Worker Education, and thank you so much. This is really a great time in our city on so many levels, and as is my style, I often I'll celebrate with everyone and push, but then I'm going to ask these challenging questions. So one of the things about the co-ops is they are businesses. And they're actually within a and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but as I've come to understand it, within capitalism, they function as a business. You need to have investment, you need to put money in, and the previous panelists would have been able to go on more about this as well as you, Carmen, but what's different, and the Assemblyman pointed out, is they are democratic. So it's a shift, but when we are trying to solve poverty with businesses and let poor people start businesses, I worry, because I have helped poor people try to start businesses before in my work, and there's a lack of capital to invest. And what we used to advise people, and this is when we were running a kitchen incubator for small businesses to start with food businesses. They had something in their house, they had a great recipe. How do you turn that into a real business? We explained you need to be able, how many hours a week could you really work? Because an entrepreneur might need to put in 60 or 70 hours a week. What if you don't make money for a few months or a year or two? Do you have other ways to make a living? And I sort of throw that out there because I think our rolling up our sleeves strategy for each business is that you don't do well right away. And without capital or family or wealth from other places to support that startup, how are we going to help? So I love the idea of actually WEP counting, because that's a good way to sort of say you can stay on public assistance while you start this. But we need to think about other ways to put capital into the mix, put money into the mix.
Well, the initiative has, help me remember, I think it's 10 different components or 5 or 6 different components that the different organizations that are going to be participating in that work will be responsible for carrying out. CUNY and the Urban Justice Center will be responsible for the technical legal assistance necessary for a business. The other providers will be doing training for those who are interested, and part of the challenge here is identifying how we're going to incubate 28 new businesses, all of whom are going to be touched by the providers that are going to be funded under the initiative, to help them navigate all those issues that you have raised. And one of the components and the challenges of worker cooperatives is, as a business, they don't meet that 51% ownership requirement, so that when you go to Chase Bank Business Solutions, right, they're real helpful, you meet that requirement. By virtue of the setup of the cooperative, you don't meet that 51% ownership, and financial institutions are less likely to approve loans for these small businesses. So part of the initiative includes a financing lending component that will be managed by one of the providers in the initiative that will help with the capital and the financial credit stuff that new businesses require. They were very thoughtful in how they put this together. They may have missed one detail, and that was that the number of existing providers may be resentful that we're paying attention to creating so many new ones. I mean, the existing businesses, the co-ops. And we're hoping, and I'm optimistic, that we're going to more than satisfy the requirements, the basic requirements, 28 new, help expand 20 existing, create how many jobs? 600 and something number of jobs as a result of the new businesses. So I think they're going to more than exceed those bottom line, because at the end of the day, next year, the city council's got to do it again, and we've got to be able to demonstrate results and success. Otherwise, Melissa and Bill are going to go, nah, no, you tried, didn't work. And then the other conversation that we all have to have is a year enough time to really incubate a business and demonstrate success? So the work is just starting, and it's just more work. And they're probably at some point going to regret that they came to me, because I have a real knack for paying attention to details and being a real, with making sure that people do what they're required to do.
And just wanted to add that it's also really not a movement about creating businesses, even though that gets manifested in it. It's a movement about creating ownership of your labor. And that's where the real heart and motivation for being part of the initiative comes from.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Guadalupe Pérez, soy sobreviviente de violencia doméstica. Nosotras en Violence Intervention Program estamos trabajando por nuestros propios medios. Son muy escasos, pero lo estamos haciendo. Hay reposteras, hay panaderas, hay mujeres que cocinan, hay mujeres como yo que hacemos collares de papel reciclado, collares de cuentas de plástico, piñatas de papel reciclado, bordado, costura, un sinfín de cosas. Entonces, yo quiero saber si hay algunas clases que nos puedan ofrecer o entrenamiento para abrir una cooperativa bien formada y con buenas bases para salir adelante y ayudar a las mujeres que ya están fuera de la violencia doméstica y se puedan mantener ellas y sus hijos sin necesidad de aplicar para asistencia pública. Guadalupe me dijo, ¿verdad? Sí, Guadalupe Pérez. Violence Intervention Program.
Good afternoon, my name is Guadalupe. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I am part of a group, and there's many women in my group that do all kinds of crafts, of skills. We have bakers, we have jewelry makers, we have other kinds of cooks, we have people that do piñatas, recycled material craft, and my question is if there is a possibility or what is the help or any classes that women like myself and the other persons in the program can get to be able to lift ourselves and bring ourselves and our children after surviving such situation. Yeah, so my main question is about classes and training. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. I just wanted to take a second to honor your survivorship. And in terms of your question, the short answer is yes. And we have a colleague with us who is the director of Green Worker Cooperatives in the Bronx that has a co-op academy that is a main part of our educational piece in trying to create this ecosystem to actually support the creation of worker co-ops that you can definitely take part in and should reach out to. Make yourself identifiable.
Well, I think it's great that CUNY is providing technical assistance, and I applaud CUNY for doing it. What would be even better from my perspective if CUNY were using its millions, I assume, if not billions, in existing buying power to purchase from worker-owned cooperatives.
We're working on that.
So my question is, how do we move this city to start adopting what they're doing in Cleveland, to use the existing buying power of the huge anchor institutions in this city? CUNY, the MTA, why aren't we using worker co-ops to build our buses and our trains? The hospitals. How do we get the city to commit to use these anchor institutions, and also for the city to commit in the same way that it commits to purchase from women and minority-owned businesses, to use its existing buying power to purchase from worker-owned cooperatives?
When That's a great question, and it was one of the issues that was raised during the hearing. I don't know if I mentioned, we held the hearing in the city council in February, and raising the question, can worker cooperatives serve as a model for raising, helping people raise out of poverty? We heard from more than 50 individuals, organizations that came to testify during the hearing, and they brought up several points. One of the very strong ones was exactly that, contracting with the city and how does the city serve as a business opportunity for these small businesses in our city. And several of my colleagues, Councilmember Helen Rosenthal, who chairs the Committee on Contracts in the City Council, Robert Carnegie, who chairs the Committee on Small Business, and Ann Gorodnick. All of us worked with the advocates around preparing this initiative. And Helen has already started the conversation and has drafted legislation with the support of some of the folks that came to meet with us at the City Council and went to testify, to look at certain requirements that exist within city policy or law or statute. And we need to examine what they are, because the model of worker cooperatives, like the example of lending institutions, the contracting with the city, there are some hiccups that we need to deal with in order to make them eligible to contract with the city. So on a sidebar is a policy legislative conversation that is happening so that we can examine what policies and what legislation we need to deal with, and that's work that we're going to work on over the next year. Helen is very excited to take the lead on that. So while I worked on developing the design for the funding, Helen will deal with the legislative along with Robert Carnegie on the legislative and policy end. Small business services in our city has programs that help small business individuals who are thinking about launching small businesses with some technical assistance. And they have all kinds of modules that they teach individuals. Not one references worker cooperative. So I think Omar will end up working for SBS at some point, doing the academy for, no, I was scared. I just wanted to see if you were paying attention. So already the Small Business Services Academy, Small Business Academy, is folding in a module on worker cooperative, so that individuals that look to the city agency for direction on business development can also hear about worker cooperatives as an option for creating a small business. So they were those 50 individuals that came to testify brought us not enough public awareness. We need to get the government to fund some efforts around helping to create more opportunities for worker cooperatives, and the contracting process with the city is complex and not worker cooperative friendly. And we heard it, and we're working on those issues as well.
And CUNY Law School is also working on those issues and examining and trying to figure out how we can help in terms of moving that process forward and making changes in the procurement process.
I went earlier today to David Hammer's presentation on worker cooperative corporations, and his example was a worker cooperative corporation that was doing construction, which brings to mind a couple of related issues, one of which is the idea of people in their communities rebuilding their communities, working together, building a lot of social capital to do that. The one thing that is actually within the control of the two people on the panel is the question of, do you see any changes coming about in law, or what changes are you looking to make to prevent large developers from coming in and using eminent domain to seize that property from those people who've built those communities with their hands, once they've reestablished the place, once they've built the social capital that's there? Are you going, or what can you do to change the law so that we can't just have land taken from people who've built cooperatively and turned over to the big developers?
Well, the eminent domain is a very serious issue, and it usually takes a lot of criteria to even to get to that point of determining whether something is eligible for eminent domain, and it usually has to be for a public good or a public use. And usually when those decisions happen, it's usually those of us who participate in those decisions. So I don't know if to say there's any, sitting legislation or pending legislation, but usually when it is that kind of topic is decided to happen, it's usually us who's looking to push for a public use. But I guess now, remember when I said that we have to get more into this mindset of understanding and letting people know about worker cooperatives, but I guess now when the subject of eminent domain comes up, we have to make sure that this is not undoing a public good. And if we decide that worker cooperatives is a public good, that's something that we in the legislative bodies have to be mindful of, that when eminent domain is being used. Because in my opinion, eminent domain only comes in the most serious of opportunities.
And the bar is really high for a project to meet that. And I don't know of any example of housing development ever fitting that requirement. A park, a hospital, a school, roadway, those are the kinds of projects that usually rise to the level of eligibility. And even then, the bar is very high. And it's not a subject that I certainly, I won't speak for Carl, take very lightly. And I have not had an opportunity in the city council in the 9 years I've been serving to have to weigh whether we're gonna take land privately and use it for something other than a public good. And I don't consider Yankee Stadium in that conversation.
And I also think there's an important aspect to that in terms of anchoring worker-owned cooperatives, because there have been issues in the past where a worker cooperative had been so successful that they would flip into a regular capitalist firm. And as a lawyer, we will set it up in a way in which that cannot happen. So we do need to be thinking with foresight, because too often we do see, once we put in the sweat and tears and make it work, other people coming to take claim and to take credit. And I think that's why we really do have to be in partnership, because we do need each other in order to make sure that things like that do not happen. I think the lady in the last row had her hand up. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jackie Sobranik. I am the outgoing Co-op Academy Coordinator from Green Worker Cooperatives. And I am very excited for Green Worker and all of the wonderful work that they're doing. I'm embarking on starting my own business for co-op developers. And I started here this morning saying I'm starting my own consulting business. And after thinking about it, I've decided that I want to make it a co-op developers cooperative to help anyone who's interested in starting their worker owner cooperative. So that being said, thank you to Omar, and through all of the experiences that I've had through Center of Family Life and everything. And Carmen, I just wanted to ask, is there opportunities for people such as myself that have been in the field that know enough in the network to really help out and be sustainable for myself, and to help other co-op developers that want to enter those anchor institutions with the money that is now available to continue co-op worker owner development?
We share the name Carmen, although it's not your first name. Okay. Are you speaking? Are you asking me, or are you asking the councilwoman?
I'm asking the councilwoman, sorry.
Maybe you should leave it on. The goal of the initiative and the components within the initiative is to help. Although you're in the network, now you become a product of that network on a different level. So you know the partners, you know who you need to connect to so that you can get on a path to develop your cooperative. That's what they're going to be charged with under this program. And I keep saying them because most of them are sitting over there, right? We have Michael and we have Brandon and Noah is back there. Protestant Federation for Protestant Welfare Agencies will be the administrator of the organizing of the efforts that will be set up. And they're under the gun because they have to produce. And remember what I said earlier, failure is not an option. Because I hope that we will have such great experiences with the efforts that are going to be undertaken that next year we're fighting for more funding in order for them to be better supported so that they can do more of that work, so that we can create the 7,000 number that Brandon spoke about earlier, make it a reality, not in a year, but, and then we also have to establish some very realistic goals and objectives under this process so that we go back to the city council and have success and ask for more money, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying to be also mindful and respectful of your time. I know we're kind of coming close to it. Why don't we take two more? And then again, this is not the end of the conversation. It will be a continuing conversation. Okay, yeah, good, because in terms of periphery. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Emma. I'm from the Center for Family Life. I just wanted to give a brief plug because we were talking about where can people who want to start a co-op go. And we were talking about classes with the Small Business Services. Center for Family Life is also part of the coalition. We're very excited. And there's going to be a class for anyone who's interested in learning more about 10 steps to starting your own co-op business on Monday, July 7th from 5 to 7 at New York City Business Solutions. And you can see me for more information if you're interested.
Thank you. Marcy Smith with Responsible Endowments. Okay, don't have to hold it down. First off, so I wanted to respond to this gentleman's point earlier about the purchasing power of institutions and anchor institutions being really important. I'd love to connect with you, and there have been several comments about the need to connect movements. Responsible Endowments Coalition works with a lot of students who are trying to get their anchor institutions, their universities, to invest their endowments and structure their operating budgets responsibly. And so, you know, I think that the fossil fuel divestment movement, the private prison divestment movement, this is an incredibly large and growing number of young people who are getting literate around issues of capital, who I think are really well primed for conversations like this one. So if there's interest for folks here to get, you know, even more students in the room, I would love to have that conversation. And a question to the panelists, I'm wondering whether the number, the 7,000 number, could include people who are in existing businesses that are not co-ops, that, you know, the businesses get cooperatized. I just, you know, this has been happening in a few places, just most recently, I think, in Ann Arbor, and that seems really exciting, particularly with this wave of baby boomers who are going to be retiring, and maybe kids don't want to come back and take over the business. So that, I'm wondering if that factors in at all to the plan.
I just want to say, because I do want to be mindful of the time, that conversions and cooperativizing pre-existing businesses, as you put it, is part of the initiative and part of our plan and strategy. In terms of how we'll use the next few minutes, I wanted to go ahead and take two more questions or / comments. One from Brian, one, sir, I don't know your name. Reg. One from Reg. Give our colleagues an opportunity to kind of give any kind of closing remark, and then welcome another really key collaborator in our coalition, Noah Franklin from Federation Protestant Worker Welfare Agencies, sorry. and then move forward from there. And again, hopefully this is not the last time we all get together to have these discussions, and we will continue having side discussions with each other as well.
This one is on.
This one's on, okay. Sorry. Okay, so I'm Brian, excuse me. I'm Brian D'Agostino. So I'm an author, and I have this, I'm working on this idea of a policy proposal for taking big corporations and creating an incentive for them to, excuse me, form equity for their workers and put workers on the boards of directors. So this has to do with cooperatizing big corporations. And so I'm just wondering, you know, when we're talking about the cooperative movement earlier, we were talking about it as if in order to extend this, we have to expand from the bottom up of what we're doing. But the unions and elected officials could be thinking in bigger terms about how to cooperatize the big corporations. I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts about that.
It's on. A lot of times when elected officials, when we get in positions of power and authority, it's usually what is that person's mindset. Now, I'll be honest with you, it would be pretty difficult to try to convince, you know, a large corporation to transition into this, particularly when the way that it's set up, because remember, for large corporations, the first thing that they're thinking about is, we all know, is producing for their shareholders. So it's going to take a large education process to go from the leadership of the company to also to the shareholders, changing that mindset into one that we think is more beneficial to having, you know, worker cooperative. So that's why I said that when this is not just about knowing that this is the right thing to do, it's about educating people. So I think it's going to take us some effort to educate large portions of the population to know that this is a better way to go or a good way to go, and not just worrying about the few small people who are benefiting from the returns on the investments and profits from large corporations.
And events like this are how we're going to build on the conversation and get the word out. Because until I went to FPWA for the conference earlier this year, it had not crossed my mind as a community leader that represents one of the poorest districts in our city. So I think that this energy is being created at the level that it is, will get us to a point where we get IBM and Apple and the other guys to maybe think about something in the manner of which you speak. But I think now we're working on the baby steps to bring government to the table in a real way. And for me, the efforts that we've been taking over the last 5 months, we're at the table now, and you know, my phrase is, we, government, needs to put skin in the game in a meaningful way so that we can create the opportunities to expand the model. IBM and Apple, I see down the road, and the light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming at us, folks. It's going to be a really good thing.
So, Reg?
Yeah, thank you, both Assembly Member and Council Member. I just wondered if there's been talk about, you know, educating the public, and I wonder what what plans you have on the horizon for doing outreach to the general public about worker cooperatives.
I don't know, but we're going to work on it, right, guys?
She's good at delegating.
I know what I don't know. I know some of what I don't know. There's a whole lot I'm not even sure I don't know. But you know, we've built the momentum and the discussion. I think that, you know, we made a lot, we put a lot of energy in making sure that my colleagues in the city council are clued in. And you can speak to just about any council member in this term in the city council, and you mention worker cooperatives, and they can articulate something that you know, gives you a sense that they know some of what they're talking about. And I think that that is already a great beginning, because then we take it home to our districts. So because I go, ooh, worker cooperatives. There's this great non-for-profit in the Bronx, Ghetto Film School, that is an incredible non-for-profit that's teaching our young people in our community how to make film. And they're graduating fellows every year. And my thinking is, well, where are these young people of color going to go into the movie industry and get a job, let alone be the owner of the company? So the Ghetto Film School has agreed to serve as the technical incubator for our film production worker cooperative as part of this 28. And now Joe Hall, from the founder and president of the Ghetto Film School, is talking to the foundations that fund the Ghetto Film School about more money to help him create this for-profit business that maybe can help the nonprofit financially, using those young people that are graduating out of their program and the cinema school in the Bronx, who, but for that opportunity, would probably never be in a decision-making position in a filmmaking company. So I'm on it, and I will talk to everybody who will listen, and I thank those who brought me into the conversation, and I am happy to say that today the city council is talking about worker cooperatives, and that wasn't happening before that work happened.
When I opened up and I said that about a year and a half ago, when the Assembly Speaker selected me to become the chair of the Labor Committee, it's, you know, when I first was elected 14 years ago, the first committee that I wanted to sit on was Labor, and the first challenge that I had last year was negotiating the first increase in the minimum wage that we had a few years ago. So you've kind of just challenged me now, because as Maria has done to educate her colleagues in the council, maybe that's my position now as the Assembly Labor Chair Committee to do that as well. And what I will do is I will speak to my colleagues who chair the Small Business Committee and chair Economic Development and see if the three of us can do a joint state hearing on worker cooperatives.
You know, and the advocates, the folks that are around that are part of this initiative, they have been relentless for the last 4.5 months. They have been relentless. They had a lobby day at the city council. They met with a bunch of council members. We had a press conference. We organized a proclamation presentation at one of the city council stated meetings that I had to miss because my son was graduating that morning. So I'm sorry, Noah, but so they pulled out all the stops on the advocacy work that's done and lobbying of elected officials in the city council body. They were running amok around 250 Broadway, the steps of City Hall, inside City Hall, and thanks to them and the effort that they have put in and the thoughtfulness that has gone into creating this initiative, that we can articulate the concept of worker cooperatives in the manner in which we can. I couldn't sit here and talk about this in January of this year. Thank you, guys.
So this is a great way to kind of segue, and I thank you, Reg, for your question, and more importantly, your call to action. And I'm happy to always know that you're going to continue the great work and follow up and take initiative around worker cooperatives and expanding our presence in New York City. And with that, I really want to take the opportunity to ask Noah Franklin from. Go ahead, you want to? Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. We're just going to. Thank you. Yes, and we're going to. And right before we do that, I just want to say that so as I pointed out, as nonprofits, it's really hard to have alliances. So the fact we have a nonprofit alliance is really important and historic. And I want to make sure to mention that Center for Family Life is also part of our alliance, who've been one of our longest standing allies. And because when it turns out that we're supposed to make, 70,000 jobs it's turned out to be now, we'll need everyone who can help. We're going to be talking about those details and the expectations. No one can actually promise you there'll be 28 businesses in a year, but we can promise that if New York City continues to support us, this room, and as it keeps growing, we can make a worker cooperative economy in New York City. So with that, we'd like to welcome, please, Noah Franklin, who, without Noah, without the Federation of Protestant Welfare Services, this would not be happening at all. It has been an unbelievable, tireless work, a great example of when nonprofits can work together, can work on behalf of greater movements. It's been tremendous to have him here. We also have Adele Bartlett from the Manhattan Borough President's Office. They're going to present proclamations. And do you want to say a couple words, or I would bring everyone up on stage first? Or you want to say it before we get up? Go ahead. Okay, so here with that, Noah Franklin, thank you.
Okay. Hi, again, I'm Noah Franklin from the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies. I'm a senior policy analyst for workforce development, and I'd like to thank Councilwoman Maria Carmen Arroyo for all her leadership. She was a tremendous ally in working with us, and Assemblyman Carl Hasty, who's been a great leader in advocating on behalf of the rights of workers in New York State. And also Carmen Huertas-Noble for moderating these panels, and Chris Michael and Brendan Martin for orchestrating this whole great conference. So the organization I work for, Federation of Protestant Welfare Organization, is an anti-poverty policy and advocacy organization. And so we work to try to reduce, our goal is to try to reduce poverty in New York City. And about a year ago, about a year and a half ago, we started looking at, we had workforce member agencies who were training people for jobs, but they couldn't find work. And what we found was that they were training people, and that the thought was, well, why couldn't the people they're training just start their own businesses? So we looked at, well, how can we help them start worker cooperatives? And we started talking to coalition people working to develop worker cooperatives. And we heard from them that, yes, their efforts can be made one-to-one to start new worker cooperatives, but there needed to be more leadership at the city level that could help on a larger scale develop worker cooperatives, to develop 28 worker cooperatives, to create 294 jobs. So that's when we started looking at what could we do on a larger scale, and we began to think about advocacy and trying to bring about reforms on the city level. And of course, the next step is to look at the state and what could be done on the state level to bring about change. And that's great to hear that you're interested in holding a hearing, and certainly there could be work to be done on the state level as well. And we're really pleased to be able to be working in the coalition to try to develop worker cooperatives to reduce unemployment and try to help people who are unemployed or underemployed. And it's been a tremendous conference today, all the discussion about workplace democracy. And I'm here today to, I want to present two proclamations. The first proclamation I have the pleasure of presenting is from the Mayor of New York City, we have a proclamation from the Mayor. And one of my colleagues, Councilman Arroyo, was talking about how we were kind of lobbying City Hall every day. And she was standing out there one day handing out a flyer, and the mayor came by, and he said, well, what are you here for? And so she said, I'm lobbying on behalf of worker cooperatives. And he said, we love worker cooperatives. So hopefully that helps someone in us getting funding. But so I'm just going to read it. And we sent the mayor, it was interesting, we wrote to each of the elected officials and gave them sample language, and the mayor and his office rewrote it to kind of emphasize his perspective on it. So I'll say it, and then I'll present it to Chris. For generations, industrious individuals have come to New York City to work hard and create a better life for themselves and their families. I'm proud of our city's well-known work ethic, and my administration is committed to protecting our workplace. Expanding paid sick leave to more than 500,000 people is an important step in the right direction, but there's always more that we can do to create a more equitable and just future. The New York City network of worker cooperatives is an important ally in our efforts to reach this goal. Worker cooperatives embody the democratic spirit on which our nation was built, offering every worker the right to self-determination and equal say in how their organization is run. Now, New York City network of worker cooperatives is a valuable resource for more than 40 worker cooperatives already operating in our city. It connects these organizations to the key support they need to thrive, while also encouraging the development of more worker-owned businesses. Today, New York City Network of Worker Cooperatives will host its first annual New York City Worker Cooperative Conference with presentations, panel discussions, and one-on-one counseling. This event is an opportunity for participants to learn more about economic democracy and connect with other employees of worker cooperatives. I applaud this organization and all of New York's cooperative businesses for strengthening our communities and helping build a more progressive tomorrow for our city. I therefore, Bill de Blasio, Mayor of the City of New York, do hereby proclaim Saturday, June 21st, 2014, the City of New York as Worker Cooperative Day.
So we're bringing up everybody from NYC who's been a part of this team to make this happen. So please, welcome everyone. Thank you.
And also, we also have a proclamation here from the Public Advocate of the City of New York. Okay. It's digital. It's digital. So maybe I'll now turn it over to one of the NYC is actually based in Manhattan, and I want to turn it over to a representative of the Office of the Manhattan Borough President, who's here to present a proclamation as well.
Thank you very much. My name is Adele Bartlett, and I'm the Deputy General Counsel for the Manhattan Borough President. And the reason I was given the honor of coming out to present this proclamation to you guys from Gail is that she knew I'm an alumna of CUNY Law School. And I want to say that I'm very proud to see the involvement of CUNY in this incredible effort, and very proud that you hosted this great conference. So I just want to, I'll read it very quickly. It's not quite as elaborate, but this, whereas we are proud to acknowledge those individuals and organizations that have remained committed to improving our city and vibrantly enriching the community, and whereas the City of New York is home to many successful and dynamic worker cooperative businesses, and whereas the City of New York City Network of Worker Cooperatives is this year hosting its first ever conference to assist in the development of worker cooperatives. And worker cooperatives are founded with an appreciation of the dignity and right to self-determination of every worker and employee, applying the democratic principle of one person, one vote to economic enterprises. And whereas we are always proud to encourage those institutions that seek to lift the community and our city, therefore I, Gail A. Brewer, do hereby proclaim Saturday, June 21st, 2014, as Worker Cooperative Appreciation Day in the Borough of Manhattan.
Thank you. Slide in. Okay, let's walk up here. Okay. Walk up in front.
Reassemble.
Okay, everyone, and don't go anywhere, because now is the most interesting part of the day. You actually get to be democratic instead of just sitting here listening. We're gonna take a 3-minute break. Some people can go to Brooks across the street if they want to. I know everyone's encouraged. So we're all gonna have our Nick Knock member meeting. This is your chance to make Nick Knock yours. What do you want Nick Knock to be next year? Stay here and make it happen. Please stay. Be part of our member meeting. Afterwards, we're going to Brooks across the street and getting beer, and you can tell us what you really thought. But please, so you can run to the bathroom, but don't leave. Chris locked the doors, so you can't even get out, so you might as well stay.